A hearty good morning to all. From our Oxford Reading Circle course book, in page number 54, we have an imaginary poem in the garden. Students, before originating the poem, let us talk about the poet. The poem in the garden is penned by Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. This poem is also known by the title A Bird Came Down the Walk. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was an American poet. Little known during her life, she has since been regarded as one of the most important figures in American poetry. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was born on 10 December 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, United States, and died on 15th May 1886 in Amherst, Massachusetts, United States. Some of the poems penned by Emily Elizabeth Dickinson are Hope, I'm Nobody, Who Are You, Wild Nights, Silence, and so on. Students, let's talk about the summary of the poem In the Garden penned by Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. In the Garden is a beautifully written poem which picturizes the encounter of the poet with a bird in a garden. The poet comes across a bird on the walk that feasts on a worm and quenches his thirst by drinking dew from the grass and moves aside to let a beetle pass. The poet notices each and every action of the bird. Perhaps perching on the wall, the bird glanced rapidly all around. His rapid eyes sparkled with fright and looked like beads. The fright of the bird is further arrested by the stare of his velvet head. It appeared like one in danger. The poet offered a crumb very cautiously to the bird, yet the bird unrolled its feathers and softly rode itself home. This was the summary of the poem. Students, the theme of the poem is death. Now, let's step into the poem. Welcome back to the poem In the Garden penned by Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. The poem In the Garden has 5 stanzas consisting 4 lines each. Come to the first stanza. First stanza of the poem brings the bird into the picture. Here, the poet introduces a bird from the wildlife to the readers. The bird comes down on the surface of the ground in a garden. Next moment, he begins to eat an angleworm on which he survives. The poet is shocked to see this act of nature, which does not even let the bird to cook his food. On the other hand, the worm had absolutely no idea that it was about to die and become someone's food in a few seconds. However, it happened beyond its control. Come to the second stanza. Second stanza of the poem shows how the bird gets rid of his thirst after feasting on the worm. He finds a grass with dew and quenches his thirst by drinking the dew. But as soon as he sees a beetle, he lets it go without any disturbance. Come to the third stanza. Third stanza of the poem presents another scene where the beetle looks like frightening tiny beads to the poet. Of the tiny creatures such as the beetle, the poet tells us that even though they are allowed to pass safely by the big birds, they fear their presence. In this poem, the poet has given the example of a bird to describe death. The poet means to tell us that even if death allows you to live for a long period of time, you are still afraid of its presence because you know in the end it is beyond your control. Come to the fourth stanza. Fourth stanza of the poem brings the poet into the scene. The poet moves from her place and offers a crumb to the cautious bird that looks at her for a few moments, unrolls his feathers and flies away. The bird has got nothing to do what the poet has to offer to him. For him, all that mattered was the raw food that he ate a while ago. The rawness attracts him and that is what he survives on. Come to the fifth stanza. Fifth stanza of the poem is the continuation of the fourth stanza. It is a description of how softly and elegantly the bird flies away as the poet moves forward to offer food to him. Just as the butterflies fly elegantly in the noon, and the horizon is created by swing the fabrics of oceans and sky, the gentleness of the bird's wings carries it back to his home. Thank you.